The story begins with a young girl who looks like a wolf. She's running through a dense forest and eventually climbs up a tall mountain. When she reaches the mountain's peak, she lets out a loud scream. At that moment, the sky above is cloudy, and there's an eerie dark red moon hanging in it. Meanwhile, 7 mysterious figures have a regular meeting with their leader, Shadow. Everything seems to be going as they planned, and there's peace in a major city. Their schemes are working. But then they hear about something troubling happening in the lawless city. They tell Shadow that there's a strange transaction there, and a lot of money is being sent into the city. This worries them because the lawless city is known for being strange. It's in the middle of the earth, and nobody really owns it. If something bad happens there, it could affect all other cities. They reluctantly decide to put their plans aside and deal with this issue. Shadow starts to speak, and he mentions that he can smell something unusual. Everyone around him gets puzzled and starts checking their own body odor. Some even quickly spray deodorant on themselves to make sure they smell okay. But then Shadow finishes his sentence by saying that he's actually talking about the lawless city, and it smells strongly of blood. He also warns them that there's a big storm on the way. Then suddenly there's a loud noise in the sky. The clouds move, and a red moon appears. They know this legendary red moon brings trouble and fear. They tell Shadow they need to find a solution quickly, but he assures them he'll handle it himself. They are uneasy because it's risky, and he might get hurt. He asks if they trust him and promises to use the best means available. They agree, even though it's a risky plan. Then, Shadow asks them if they find the moon beautiful. They all kneel and say yes, pledging their loyalty to him. They set out for the lawless city. In the lawless city, there are 2 unknown people who are observing from a distance. They're curious why other folks seem scared to approach the city's gate. These 2 strangers think that these other people are being afraid and call them cowards. They believe they can take on the vampires living in the city. You see, the lawless city is where the Fujita vampires reside, and their leader, known as the Blood Queen, is a very frightening figure. The city itself has 3 rulers, and the Blood Queen is one of them, holding a significant position of power there. The 2 men insist they can enter the city, but a vampire confronts them and asks why they want to go in. They try to show off their strength, but the vampire reveals his injured arm, draws his sword, and attacks them. In no time, their blood splatters in the sky, and the red moon appears again. On the other hand, there are 2 siblings named Sid and Claire who find themselves in the lawless city. Sid is a bit puzzled about why they're in this city, but Claire has brought him along. However, Sid is excited to explore a new city, and he likes how it looks. Claire tells Sid not to draw too much attention because she wants to keep her presence there a secret. He doesn't really know why they're visiting, so he asks Claire where they're going. Claire's plans are quite different from Sid's expectations. She wants to visit the Dark Knight Association before anything else. Sid has no idea what this association is because it doesn't exist in their own city. Claire explains to him that the Dark Knight Association is a secretive group specific to the lawless city. Sid may not completely understand, but he trusts his sister's judgment. He recalls a time when he was thought to be dead and buried, but somehow he's alive now. He doesn't fully grasp what happened, but he knows he's here. A few days ago, Claire won a competition, and she was declared the champion. Sid wants to celebrate her achievement, so he arranges a little party at the Miss Hoshu Chambers of Commerce. However, the celebration is interrupted when Claire reveals her intention to go to the lawless city to hunt vampires. She insists that Sid comes along, telling him it's for his future. If he learns from her and trains well, she can arrange for him to become a Midgar's Knight after he graduates. This seems like a good opportunity for Sid because he hasn't figured out what he wants to do after graduation. As they journey through the city, they pass by a pet shop. The shopkeeper tries to persuade Claire to buy some pets, complimenting her appearance and showing her various animals. Claire declines the offer and pulls Sid away. Sid asks her to stop dragging him, but she worries that he might get lost on his own, and it turns out she's right. Sid gets separated from Claire as he steps aside for some fresh air. He stands by the roadside, wondering how he'll find his way back to his sister. Suddenly, a thief snatches his purse, but Sid uses his magic to retrieve both his purse and the thief's purse. Similarly, he collected a lot of purse. Then, unexpectedly, a group of men starts attacking a ghoul. Sid is puzzled by their actions because he thought ghoul were strong. Suddenly, there is magical explosion and the moon turned red. Sid notices a magical waves. Then the vampire underling becomes violent and starts attacking them. Sid remembers the rumors about vampires turning anyone they bite into vampires themselves. As the moon turns red once again, Sid is unsure of what to do. He is confused if he should scream or kill them. Just when things look dire, a woman named Mary arrives and kills the vampires. She introduces herself as an ancient vampire hunter and advises Sid to run away immediately because a frenzy is about to begin. Mary swiftly flies toward the red moon, leaving Sid in awe of the city's adventurous nature. Meanwhile, Claire goes to Sid's hotel room to find him, but he's nowhere to be seen. She becomes frustrated because she had instructed him to stay inside the room like a good boy. At the same time, a man rushes out of the room adjacent to Sid's, chased by a mindless ghoul. Claire saved the man from the ghoul with a kick to the face. He remains terrified of her and apologizes out of fear. He doesn't understand what's happening but thanks Claire for rescuing him. Claire, however, isn't interested in his gratitude and asks the man if he has seen a young boy with dark hair and dark eyes. The man, utterly bewildered, has no clue who Sid is and believes Claire is acting strangely. In his panic, he grabs the nearest object he can find to protect himself, which happens to be the dead ghoul. In another part of the city, two of Sid's friends from the academy, Poe and Skell, find themselves in the red light district. They're on the hunt for women, hoping that tonight will be their chance to have some fun. They are fully aware that this could get them expelled from the academy, but the allure is too strong for them to resist. They believe it's a rare opportunity for two guys like them. However, their excitement is short-lived as they are suddenly kicked from behind by a group of ghouls. Realizing the danger, they panic and run away, screaming for their lives. The commotion caused by their screams awakens a woman named Marie in a nearby building. She realizes that she is being forced into unpleasant activities with other men. Looking out of her window, she contemplates the worst that could happen in her life. To her horror, she sees the streets filled with monsters. Fear grips her, and a ghoul enters her room, ready to attack. Just when things seem hopeless, the mastermind behind the scenes, Sid himself, arrives and saves Marie from the ghoul. He explains to her about the frenzy causing the crescent moon to turn people into ghouls and urges her to run as far away as possible. After conveying this information, Sid fades back into the shadows. At that moment, Marie's friend enters the room and learns about her rescue by the enigmatic Sid. This confuses her because Sid is known for being an evil mastermind. Nevertheless, Marie doesn't believe Sid is evil, and to show her support, she decides to break her contract and run away, even if it means risking her life. Speaking of escaping the frenzy, a woman named Yukime believes that nobody can ever get away from this nightmare. Her two subordinates inform her about the situation. Vampires have turned people into ghouls. She decides to take action at last. Meanwhile, Claire comes across a gruesome sight, what appears to be Sid torn apart into pieces. Grief overwhelms her, and she mourns his apparent death, expressing regret that she shouldn't have brought him to this city. Iris arrives and informs Claire that the deceased person she's holding isn't actually her brother. Instead, it's just a random individual. Claire takes a closer look and realizes that it's indeed not Sid. She is disappointed rather than relieved and asks Iris if she knows where Sid is. Iris tells her that she saw Sid laughing like a maniac down in the streets where the ghouls are running rampant. Claire, however, doubts Iris's words, thinking of Sid as her timid little brother who wouldn't have the courage to be in the midst of a ghoul apocalypse. Despite her skepticism, Claire agrees to listen to Iris's information. She learns that Sid has been taken by the followers of the Blood Queen to the Crimson Tower, the castle of the Blood Queen. Claire is puzzled as to why they would abduct Sid, considering him a random person. Iris explains that they took him to awaken the Blood Queen from her 1,000-year slumber, and for that, they need the blood of a living young man. Believing Iris's story, Claire takes out her sword and decides to team up with Iris to reach the Crimson Tower. Along the way, they defeat many mindless ghouls and introduce themselves to each other. On another note, Poe and Skell, the two guys who were running away early, still seem unrepentant about their decision to visit the red light district. They seem more focused on the physical attributes of the women they saw. As the situation escalates, even the town's law enforcement agencies are struggling to control it. In the midst of this chaos, the shadowy figure, Sid, takes it upon himself to rectify the situation. Meanwhile, Mort Crimson receives news that their plan to take over the city is facing resistance. He mentions that only two individuals can pose a problem for him, Yukime and the Juggernaut, who are the only obstacles to their plan to revive the Blood Queen. However, his subordinate informs him that there is one more person involved. The scene shifts, and we witness a confrontation between Yukime and the Juggernaut. Just as they are about to engage in a battle, Sid makes a grand entrance between them. Both Yukime and the Juggernaut are puzzled, and as always, Sid introduces himself in the most badass way possible. The story continues as we meet a man known as White Devil. He believed that taking someone's life gave his own life purpose and made him feel truly alive. He thought he was the best at surviving, but he made a mistake that cost him an arm. Now, seeing the streets filled with ghouls, he screams out his strong desire to kill someone. As he's filled with this need for violence, he notices two people, Juggernaut and Yukime, who are busy defeating ghouls. White Devil sees them as powerful individuals and wonders why they've come into his territory. He's curious about their presence. During the fight, Shadow joins in. Both Juggernaut and Yukime recognize Shadow as the person who created chaos in the Midgar royal capital, and easily defeated some priests. However, Juggernaut doesn't seem bothered and breaks the door of the Crimson Tower. Shadow then mentions that the moon has turned red, signaling the start of a frenzy. Yukaim wonders if Shadow is referring to the ongoing trouble with the ghouls, and Juggernaut thinks it might be related to an old legend about 3 kingdoms falling when the moon turned red. He hopes this might give the vampires a good challenge. Meanwhile, White Devil is intrigued by how easily Juggernaut broke a strong gate, even though it's supposed to be an artifact. He sees both Juggernaut and Yukaim as monstrous figures and yearns to harm some humans. His attention shifts to Shadow, who he thinks is weaker because he can't sense any power from him. He decides to attack Shadow, but it turns out to be a grave mistake. Shadow effortlessly slices White Devil into pieces, leaving him baffled about this mysterious person. Shadow reiterates that the red moon marks the beginning of a frenzy. The scene shifts to Beta in the library of the Crimson Tower. She's been reading some books and has a realization. She thinks that if the technology of that era was this advanced, it's clear that the church possessed extraordinary technology. She believes that the source of their power was connected to a demon. This leaves her curious about how the church acquired the knowledge to harness that power. While Beta ponders this, she suddenly hears a commotion. Claire and Marie enter the library, and it's revealed that they fell into some kind of trap that brought them here. Beta is unsure about what to do next. Her orders were to eliminate all witnesses, but she's hesitant in this situation. She mentions that she doesn't want to fight Claire, and Claire is surprised that Beta knows her. Beta tells Claire that she knows that Claire is the one who won the grand festival. Marie suggests they shouldn't fight Beta because she's not a vampire, and they don't have time to waste, and also Beta isn't alone. There are 3 more members of Shadow Garden with her, one of whom is named Rose. Claire asks Beta about her identity, and Beta explains that she's a member of Shadow Garden. She discloses that she's researching the possessed for reasons she can't fully explain, and she's hoping to obtain a blood sample from a progenitor vampire. Marie is curious about the connection between progenitor vampires and the possessed, and Beta clarifies that, according to their theory, the possessed and vampires share a common origin. The bloodlines diverge during their descent. To test this hypothesis, they need to study the Blood Queen's blood. Marie expresses concern, saying that what they plan to do would be seen as blasphemy against the progenitors. Beta wonders why this upsets Marie, and it's revealed that Marie is an ancient vampire hunter rumored to have lived for over 1,000 years. Beta says they're going to continue their mission, and she wants Marie and Claire out of the way. Claire asks Beta if there's a way to cure the possessed, to which Beta reassures her that Claire has nothing to worry about. Claire is puzzled by this and urges them to leave so they can save her brother without wasting more time. Hearing Claire's words, Rose becomes worried and starts to ask about Sid's well-being, but Beta stops her and reminds her to stay in line. Beta then asks Marie if she has no desire to seek safety again. Claire and Marie decide to leave, and Beta expresses disappointment in Rose. Rose apologizes to her. Beta clarifies that their mission is to retrieve a sample and mentions that Lord Shadow will handle the Blood Queen. The scene shifts to Marie and Claire, who are battling a vampire. They defeat it by piercing its heart. Claire is surprised that even immortal vampires can be killed this way. Marie explains that vampires are weakened by sunlight, so they need to keep moving to stay safe. Claire wonders if Marie is hiding something from her, and is curious about the haven mentioned by Beta in the library. Marie, in turn, thinks that Claire is keeping something secret. She reminds Claire that it's widely known that the possessed can never truly be human. She's puzzled by Claire's question and mentions that everyone has their own secrets. Marie offers not to pry into Claire's secrets if Claire reciprocates. As they continue, they feel some tremors and notice Juggernaut, who is slaughtering vampires. He seems to consider them weak and is searching for the Blood Queen. Marie and Claire recognize Juggernaut and are aware of his formidable power. Marie believes they should avoid a confrontation with him. However, Juggernaut notices them and strikes Claire in the face, then punches Marie. He seems to think they'd be tougher opponents. Claire stabs Juggernaut in the leg, showing her resilience. She points out that he's the second person to hit her in the face. Claire then notices that Marie is badly hurt. Marie believes it's been too long for her and asks Claire for permission to drink her blood. After a kiss, Marie drinks Claire's blood, which quickly heals her wounds. She then launches an attack on Juggernaut, but he manages to dodge her strikes. Juggernaut counterattacks with a powerful blow, and Marie realizes the blood isn't assimilating as it should. Juggernaut aims for a decisive strike when Shadow arrives on the scene. He kicks Juggernaut out of the tower, saving Marie and Claire. Shadow mentions that the frenzy has begun and time is short, and then he departs. Claire has a question in her mind. Could Shadow be here to help them? Marie, on the other hand, suspects that Shadow might be the person marked as an enemy by the church. Marie takes a moment to apologize to Claire for taking her blood. Claire feels a bit embarrassed about it, but she quickly reassures Marie that it's okay. Now, Claire becomes curious about Marie's true nature. She asks if Marie is a vampire. Marie confirms that she is indeed a vampire and promises to explain everything. Marie takes us back to a time more than 1,000 years ago, what she calls the golden age of vampires. Vampires ruled and would hunt humans, treating them like prey. However, things changed as humans learned the vampires' weaknesses, and suddenly, the vampires became the hunted ones. In the midst of this transformation, there was the Blood Queen, Lady Elizabeth. She was living among humans, ruling a small town, and she genuinely wanted to coexist with the human population. To achieve this, she gave up drinking blood, and her subjects followed her example. As a result, their powers gradually faded away, and they even gained the ability to walk in the sunlight. Their thirst for blood diminished over time, and they enjoyed a peaceful coexistence with humans. However, the Blood Queen had a different experience. No matter how hard she tried to avoid blood, her thirst for it never went away. Sunlight would burn her skin painfully. Despite this, she still desired to create a haven where both humans and vampires could live happily together. Then, the Night of the Red Moon, which only occurred once every 1,000 years, brought a great change. It granted vampires tremendous powers, making Queen Elizabeth crave blood again. A vampire named Crimson gave her a drop of blood, triggering a 3-day frenzy. This frenzy led to the destruction of their haven, reducing it to ruins. The 3 kingdoms also suffered great damage during this event. Marie survived by drinking the blood of the dead and attempted to reach the Queen. However, when they finally reunited, it was too late. Queen Elizabeth acknowledged her mistake, and in her final moments, she asked Marie to scatter her ashes into the ocean to prevent her from coming back. The Queen took her own life by piercing her heart. What's unusual is that she didn't disintegrate like a typical vampire, and she couldn't fulfill her wish or resist it. Soon after, Crimson and his followers took the Queen from Marie. They spared her life out of respect for her service to the Queen. Crimson hoped that Marie would join him during the next Red Moon and planned to use the Queen for his own ambitions. Marie believes that Queen Elizabeth won't forgive her. Claire comforts Marie by expressing that she, too, feels she's not so different from her. She's concerned that she might be possessed and came to help her brother before she turns into a monster. However, her actions have put her brother in danger. Claire then raises a crucial question. Is Marie absolutely certain that they can't rebuild their haven? Marie explains that she's determined not to repeat the same mistake, and she believes Queen Elizabeth might want to die. Claire suggests that the only way to understand the Queen's true intentions is to have a conversation with her. She firmly believes that what they initially tried to build was not a mistake. Claire proposes that their first step should be to confront Crimson and rescue their Queen. Marie thanks Claire for her support and promises to save Sid as well. Claire reassures Marie that she'll personally take care of Sid's situation. On the other side, we witness one of Sid's friends desperately running away from zombies. Unfortunately, another of Sid's friends has already been turned into a zombie. The scene shifts to Shadow in the tower's treasury. He notices that the vampires have collected valuable items and decides to take 1,000 coins because they are easy to use. Also, since he planned to live at least 300 years, this much is good amount of money. Then, a realization hits him that the boss battle is approaching. Shadow acknowledges that he's been arriving late for a dramatic entrance in the past, but now he wants to change that. His new plan is to be the first one to arrive and offer the named characters a front row view of an amazing battle. He aims to show them that this fight is far beyond their abilities and truly impressive. Next, we see Crimson attempting to revive Queen Elizabeth. He places her heart inside a sacrifice's body. However, Shadow steps in and attacks Crimson. During the struggle, the heart falls out of the sacrifice. The story continues after Shadow wins against the vampire. Now, Shadow is looking for the last boss's body, but it can't find it. Shadow is puzzled because it was expecting a big final boss fight. However, he starts to think that maybe this is an event where everyone is supposed to team up for group battle, and there might not be a real boss battle. To be certain, Shadow decides to check the underground. If it doesn't discover anything there, it plans to take the money and go back home. After he leaves, the heart of the Queen Vampire starts growing. The scene changes to Claire and Marie. Claire is searching for Sid, while Marie is searching for Queen Elizabeth. Claire can't find Sid anywhere, and begins to wonder if Sid wasn't the intended sacrifice. On the other hand, Marie also can't find Elizabeth, and is puzzled by what's happening. Suddenly, she senses something and warns Claire to be careful. However, the Blood Queen uses one of her hairs to stab Claire, causing her to collapse. Marie desperately pleads with the Queen not to kill Claire, but it seems the Queen isn't listening. The Queen drags Claire closer, and reveals her vampire teeth, preparing to suck Claire's blood. Marie doesn't know what to do since she can't take on the Blood Queen by herself. Just then, the members of Shadow Garden who are present in the tower arrive. They free Claire from Elizabeth's grasp and decapitate Elizabeth number 664. They realize that Claire is still alive, but emergency first aid won't be enough to save her. Beta, one of the Shadow Garden members, believes they can't make a quick escape right now because their leader hasn't revealed himself yet. This suggests he has something more important to attend to. Beta thinks that their leader has entrusted her with handling this situation, and she can't let Lord Shadow's sister die. Beta then asks 664 to continue looking after Claire and requests assistance from 665 and Rose. Shadow Garden engages in a battle with Elizabeth, but Elizabeth manages to stop Rose and number 665. Beta, in the meantime, cuts off Elizabeth's hand and blasts her with magic. Marie realizes that this may not be enough to defeat her queen and mentions that her queen has always been slow to gain power due to low blood pressure. Elizabeth heals herself and releases her true magical energy, which is even greater than Alpha's. Seeing this, Yukame thinks she has to leave. Juggernaut then arrives and strikes Elizabeth, but she slams him into the wall and attacks everyone by controlling drops of blood. Shadow Garden tries to protect Claire, but the attacks leave Juggernaut heavily wounded, making Yukame think he's now useless. Numbers 664 and 665 are heavily injured, and Beta and Rose are slightly injured, but Elizabeth shows no signs of fatigue. Beta realizes that Elizabeth is increasing her power by taking their blood and tells Rose to take Claire and leave because Rose still has unfinished business. Beta attempts to attack Elizabeth, but Elizabeth somehow takes control of the possessed blood in the members of Shadow Garden, causing them to transform. Beta can't believe that Elizabeth can interfere with the blessings given to them by Lord Shadow. This also leads to Claire transforming into a monster. The scene shifts to Claire waking up in her own inner world. In this place, she meets someone named Aurora. Aurora tells Claire that the possession that has been troubling her was actually cured a long time ago. Claire finds this hard to believe and wonders who could have cured her. Aurora explains that it was someone Claire knows very well, but Claire is confused and doesn't know who Aurora is referring to. Aurora then goes on to say that Claire had been adapting to some special powers, but she lost control. Soon, her body would start to deteriorate. Aurora offers to help Claire with this situation, though Claire is puzzled by what Aurora means. Claire asks Aurora where she is and who she's talking to, and also about the person who cured her. Aurora realizes that Claire has many questions and tries to clarify things. She explains that Claire's blood has split into two different types due to adaptation. These two types are the possessed and the progenitor vampire, each with distinct characteristics. Right now, these two types of blood are trying to adapt within Claire, and her body is suitable for this change. However, Claire doesn't know how to control it, which is why her blood has become uncontrollable. Aurora senses that her time in the conversation is ending, and she marks Claire's hand with a strange symbol, telling her that this mark will help her learn to control her powers. Claire was curious and asked Aurora to explain things in more detail. Aurora, however, pointed out that time was running out because things were getting chaotic outside. Claire then questioned who Aurora was and why she was helping her. Aurora introduced herself and revealed that she was assisting Claire because she belonged to Shadow. In the real world, Cleric transformed into Aurora, giving her a taste of freedom after a month of being confined. Beta, a member of Shadow Garden, inquired about what happened to Claire, and Aurora clarified that she was merely altering her appearance, similar to how Shadow changes his appearance. Elizabeth, the Blood Queen, launched an attack using drops of her blood, but Aurora stopped the blood in midair. She explained that gaining control of blood outside the body was not a big challenge. Aurora retaliated against Elizabeth using the same blood, and they engaged in a battle using blood as their weapon. Juggernaut observed the fight, finding it quite intense, and Yukime agreed. Aurora then mentioned that she would demonstrate the most powerful ability in the world as a bonus and attempted to use Shadow's atomic attack. However, her current body couldn't handle such immense power. Elizabeth fully healed herself, and Aurora stated that her purpose was to buy time until Shadow arrived. Shadow finally appeared and declared that the hour of awakening had come. Elizabeth tried to attack Shadow with blood-based attacks, but Shadow countered them using his slime suit. Marie was astonished that Shadow could hold his own against Queen Elizabeth, and that he was even more powerful than the Witch of Calamity. Beta questioned why Shadow was prolonging the exchange of blows, believing he was well within striking distance to defeat Elizabeth in a single strike. Shadow protected the members of Shadow Garden from Elizabeth's stray attacks. Beta realized that Shadow was shielding them from Elizabeth's onslaught, knowing that they were currently defenseless. Shadow emphasized that he couldn't afford to lose a single member, regardless of the challenges they faced. This confirmed Beta's belief that Shadow was determined to protect his team from Elizabeth's attack. Shadow reiterated that he couldn't afford to lose anyone from his team. Beta is in awe that Shadow cares so deeply for her, But it turns out he's not talking about her, he's talking about the gold coins. Beta continues with her own thoughts, and Shadow thinks he can't afford to lose any more of those coins. He faces Elizabeth in close combat, and the two engage in a spectacular fight, impressing numbers 664 and 665 with their lord's power. Juggernaut wonders how Shadow can fly through the sky, and Yukon thinks he's a surprising individual. As Shadow and Elizabeth continue their intense battle, Shadow feels that the game has dragged on for too long. Elizabeth, on the other hand, asks for Shadow's name. He responds by preparing his atomic attack, despite Marie's plea for him not to use it. Shadow unleashes the recovery atomic attack, which not only cures those who turned into ghouls or showed signs of possession, but also heals injury and nullifies the red moon. Beta believes that ETA, someone likely from their group, will find this information very interesting. With their mission complete, Shadow Garden departs. Marie reunites with Queen Elizabeth, and Juggernaut contemplates the idea of picking a fight with Shadow Garden. Next, the scene shifts to Sid's friends, Goldie and Quentin, at the train station. They express disappointment in not accomplishing their objectives for coming here. Claire says her goodbyes to Marie, and Sid believes that ghouls, vampires, and the possessed are just different terms for a magic overload, which can be cured. However, there are afflictions that can't be cured. Sid notices her sister, Claire, talking to herself about having special powers and wonders if her destiny is leading her somewhere. On the train ride back home, Sid thinks her sister might have delusions of grandeur, but she can't dismiss her pain, as all children have walked a similar path at some point. Sid believes that brushing off a child's concerns can lead them down the wrong path. Claire then mentions that she needs to tell Sid something important. Special powers have taken root in her left hand, and she must solve the mystery of these powers. Sid reassures Claire, telling her he knows she will be okay, and no matter what path she chooses, he will support her. However, Sid still believes that his sister is delusional. As the train departs the station, Claire asks Sid if he knows about Shadow. Sid recalls that Shadow is the person who burned down their school, and he wonders why Claire is curious about him. Claire dismisses the topic. Sid believes that Claire will face many trials and tribulations, needing to confront her anxiety, pain, and the realities of her situation. He feels helpless as her hand starts tingling. Sid acknowledges that they've been through a lot, and this event is finally over. Although he had some setbacks and only managed to recover 500 gold coins, it's still a substantial amount. He thinks that the lawless city will always be there, with 2 towers still standing, and he can return if he faces financial difficulties because the lawless city is like his piggy bank. The scene shifts to Shadow meeting Yuki on a train, and he asks her about what she wanted to talk to him about. The story continues with a group of bandits who are robbing a train carrying valuable Mitsugoshi goods. Their leader tells the Mitsugoshi workers that the company has been making a lot of money recently, and stealing 100 million from them would be easy. He explains that Mitsugoshi has been growing rapidly, and their boss thinks it's time to stop them. To intimidate the workers, the leader tears one of their clothes. One of the workers, a girl, wonders who their boss is. The leader reveals that their boss is Garter, who controls all the buying and selling in Midgar. The girl is surprised because Garter is known as a respectable man, the president of a major corporate alliance, and a devoted follower of the divine teaching. He has also made significant donations to the church. She doesn't believe he would hire people like the bandits. The leader insists that even seemingly righteous people can have hidden dark sides, and Garter's success is partly due to people like them. The girl realizes there's no point in arguing with them. Just then, the Shadow Garden group arrives. The workers change their outfits, revealing that they are all members of Shadow Garden. They confront the bandits, and Alpha, one of the Shadow Garden members, thinks that this operation has significantly reduced the legitimate forces of Mitsugoshi. They hope that the underworld figures connected to the church will reveal themselves in response to their action. The next scene in the story shows Scal and Poe proudly displaying their new Mitsugoshi clothes to Sid. They believe that wearing these trendy outfits will make them the center of attention among girls. Sid, however, suspects that the fashion trend was probably Zeta's idea and that the girls are getting carried away with it. As they chat, Sid notices a problem with Skel's clothes. The Mitsugoshi logo is peeling off. Skel realizes the same issue with the logo, and Poe quickly dismisses the clothes as cheap without the logo. To their surprise, they find another logo beneath the Mitsugoshi emblem, which belongs to the shop where they purchased the clothes. This discovery makes them question the authenticity of the Mitsugoshi logo, which seems a bit off. Sid, on the other hand, starts reflecting on his own outfits. He realizes that all his clothing choices are influenced by Alpha and the girls. Everything he wears feels like a copy of his past life, where people in the capital wore suits. He understands that Alpha is using his knowledge to dominate the fashion market. This realization leads him to believe that the competitors in the market must be unhappy with Alpha's tactics. Sid decides that it's time to put an end to this situation. During the night, Shadow dresses up like a secret agent, determined to make a name for himself in the world. He meets with Yukime and requests that she doesn't call him Shadow but instead uses the alias John Smith. Yukime is glad to have him on their side, and John explains that it's a mutually beneficial arrangement for him. Yukime shares some crucial information with John. She informs him that Garter recently called a meeting for the major corporate alliance to strengthen their strategies against Mitsugoshi. She believes that Mitsugoshi's downfall might happen sooner than expected. John reassures her that their plan remains unchanged. They intend to take advantage of the chaos that will result from the conflict between Mitsugoshi and the alliance. Yukime then asks John for his assistance, but she warns him to be cautious. She reveals that within the alliance, there's a formidable swordsman who rose to power above Garter. His name is Getten, the Sword Devil, and she knows him well. Getten is a dangerous man who will go to any lengths to achieve his goals. After their conversation, John departs, and Yukime eagerly awaits to see who will emerge victorious in this intense conflict. The situation seems tense and unpredictable, with many players vying for control and power in this complex web of alliances and rivalries. We are taken to the capital, where all the major stores are having an autumn sale. Poe and Skell are trying to find some affordable clothes there. Sid, on the other hand, believes that Alpha and the girls have crossed a line. They are selling exclusive products without considering the local distributors, making enemies of all the major corporations. Sid thinks this might be the reason for the sale, and he fears that Mitsugoshi's future looks bleak, now that they've angered the rest of the industry. He's determined to crush Mitsugoshi and other corporations and start a new one. He plans to invite Alpha and the girls to join the upper management, change the corporation's name, and give Mitsugoshi a fresh start. Later, Poe is at the cashier, paying for some clothes he damaged during the sale. Sid notices that the change given by the shopkeeper is strange. Poe explains that these are the new bills introduced by the major corporate alliance. Sid then asks his friends what bills they used before this. Skell shows him a bill from the Mitsugoshi Bank, which they could only use in Mitsugoshi stores before. Now, they can use it all over the city. Sid recalls that he once mentioned banks and credit creation to the girls, but his knowledge was limited. He's surprised that they used that information to establish their own bank and currency, inspiring others to follow suit. This revelation sparks an idea in Sid's mind. He notices that the Mitsugoshi Bank's bills are more intricate, with multicolor printing and a watermark, while the copycat version is simpler and crudely printed. He remembers a childhood curiosity about duplicating bills with a printing machine. Now, as a secret agent, he decides to take the money and make a run for it. The scene switches to John Smith having a conversation with Yukime. John begins by discussing the value of gold coins, mentioning that they're worth more than they seem. He introduces the concept of credit creation, where a simple piece of paper, like paper money, can be given a higher value than actual gold. Yukime wonders if he's talking about paper money, and John confirms that he is. John goes on to explain how credit creation works. He points out that a piece of paper, which is practically worthless, can be made to represent a higher value than gold. To illustrate, he shows Yukime bills from both Mitsugoshi and the Alliance and asks if she notices any differences. Yukime observes that one of them has a watermark, while the other does not. John adds that the Alliance's bill has a less detailed design. Yukime realizes that these differences would make it relatively easy to duplicate the Alliance's bills. Here's where it gets interesting. John suggests they create counterfeit money and profit from these fake bills, but Yukime raises a concern. She reminds John that the Alliance's bills are only in use within the royal capital. If they counterfeit them, the authorities will quickly trace the fake bills back to the source. John is surprised that he didn't think of such an important detail. In response, John questions whether Yukime genuinely believes that this is his plan, using an intimidating tone. Yukime then grasps that John wants the fake bills to be discovered. This would create panic among the citizens, causing them to doubt the value of paper money. People would rush to the banks to exchange it for gold. By being ahead of the game, John and his allies could profit from this situation. Yukime suspects that this might have been John's plan all along. However, it becomes clear that John doesn't know what Yukime is talking about when he asks her if this is genuinely her belief. Yukime tries to think further but can't come up with an alternative explanation. She reaffirms that this is indeed what she thinks. As the scene progresses, John departs the train at the next station. Yukime believes that John might have been testing her sincerity. She reflects that if she had given in to pressure and spoken without thinking, it could have been detrimental. In another part of the story, Shadow Garden resorts to extreme measures by killing a carriage driver to steal his carriage. After that, Sid is thoroughly enjoying his newfound secret identity while savoring a bowl of ramen. He shares his meal with someone sitting beside him and then realizes that the person is Delta. Sid is curious about why she's here. Delta, with an appetite for more, asks Sid, who's now going by Shadow, for more food. Sid obliges, feeding her more, and then gives her a piggyback ride. Delta notices that Sid smells like foxes. Sid explains that he's been out hunting foxes. Intrigued, Delta expresses her desire to join Sid on a fox hunt. Sid inquires about Delta's purpose in the capital. She reveals that Alpha instructed her to hunt, and when Sid asks what she's been hunting, Delta tells him she's been after bandits. Sid shares that he enjoys hunting bandits but regrets that he can't do it at the moment. Despite his current circumstances, Delta persists in asking Sid to join her on a bandit hunt. Sid deduces that Delta likely came to the capital because Alpha wanted to meet her. Delta recalls Alpha's invitation to meet, and Sid advises her to hurry and see Alpha. They both wonder what will happen to their bandit hunt. The scene then shifts to Garter informing Getten that the soldiers sent after Mitsugoshi have all been defeated. Getten believes that the bandits proved to be ineffective against Mitsugoshi. He decides to dispatch the Clovers, elite assassins of his own choosing, to deal with Mitsugoshi. Garter explains that with the Clovers on the task, Mitsugoshi's secrets are as good as exposed. Afterward, we see Shadow and Delta teaming up to hunt down some bandits. Shadow notices that Delta seems to struggle with the command to stay as her hunting style is more of a one-sided massacre. While it makes it easier to gather treasure, it lacks the enjoyment of a fair battle. During their hunt, one of the bandits recognizes Delta as Sarah and introduces himself as Zabra. Delta detects a familiar scent and realizes he smells like her father. Zabra goes on to reveal that he's her big brother and expresses surprise that Delta is still alive since their father hunted her down after she was possessed. Delta casually responds that she's just good at hide and seek. Zabra then asks Delta to spare him, explaining that he now works for Getten. However, Delta decides to kill him, leaving Shadow questioning her decision. Delta justifies her actions, stating that she has no use for a weak brother. She explains that their father, who is the chief of their clan, has many lovers and over 1,000 children, so one less won't make a difference. She emphasizes that only the strong survive in their clan, which aligns with her Therianthrope nature. On their way back, Shadow tells Delta that he would like to visit the Therianthrope lands someday. Delta thinks it's a good idea and suggests that if Shadow defeats her father, he could become their chief, have many lovers, and create a powerful clan. Shadow dismisses this idea, and the scene shifts to Getten learning about Zabra's defeat. Garter informs Getten that their numbers have been dwindling, and this could affect the personnel managing their public enterprises. They've also invested heavily in establishing their bank and currency. Garter suggests they might need to cut their losses and take a few steps back. Getten acknowledges that he's the one who put Garter in charge of controlling all commerce in the city. Getten adds that Zabra was the weakest of the Clovers, their elite group of assassins. He instructs Garter to summon the 3 remaining Clovers. Getten begins to realize that Mitsugoshi is tougher than he initially thought, and now understands why the cult labeled them as a threat. The story continues with Gamma reporting to Alpha that they are doing well in protecting their transport trains and dominating the market. The major corporate alliance, however, lacks the wisdom of their group known as the Shadows. They struggle to provide paper money and credit efficiently. Alpha mentions that this was expected, but she warns Gamma not to take any actions that suggest Mitsugoshi has a connection to the Shadow Garden. She emphasizes how trust can be easily destroyed. New arrives and mentions that they have some unwelcome guests. Hearing this, Gamma thinks that these infiltrators, unlike Garter, lack patience. Alpha says that they are not able to control their Therianthrope nature. Alpha wants New to handle the guests, but Gamma steps up and asks to take care of them herself. Everyone is surprised because Gamma is not known for her battle skills. Alpha then asks Omega and Kai to accompany Gamma on this mission. They all set out to deal with the invaders. Alpha believes everything will be fine because, after all, she is already 17 years old. This statement shocks New. Scene changes and we see that the invaders called Clovers believe that it was too easy to infiltrate the place and suspect that their security is guarding their transport. Their target is a manager named Luna. That's when Gamma and her friends, Omega and Kai, arrive. Omega and Kai take on 2 of the Clovers, leaving Gamma to face the remaining one. He thinks he's the strongest and can handle Gamma since she doesn't have any bodyguards. He attacks Gamma, but it doesn't do much to her. Gamma then tries to use her slime blade to attack him, but she can't hit him. The Clover thinks Gamma is fast but inexperienced. Gamma recognizes the Clover's fencing style as part of the Western Liechtenroy style, and she believes she can counter him now that she knows his style. However, she still can't land her attacks, and the Clover thinks she's truly an amateur. He attacks her with a blade, but it doesn't hurt Gamma much, and the blade gets messed up. The Clover wonders what's happening, and Gamma realizes he must be a skilled warrior to land a hit on her. Gamma decides to unleash her full power by jamming her magic energy into her attack, following Lord Shadow's advice. She has high stats, but she stumbles, causing an accidental explosion. Gamma tries to make it seem like the Clover set a trap for her in advance, but he wants no more of it and tells his men to retreat. Kai informs the remaining Clover that they've taken care of his men, and Gamma claims she now knows the secret behind the Clover's strength and will reveal her full power. She attempts to attack the Clover again, but she falls once more, and her sword accidentally hits the fleeing Clover, killing him. Gamma pretends it was all part of her plan. The scene switches to Getten discovering that the Clovers haven't returned. Gator informs him that they haven't heard from them or the lookout team they sent. He suspects that some members of the Alliance have ties with Mitsugoshi, and this incident might make them talk. Getten instructs Gator to silence them. Getten realizes he shouldn't have expected anything from the bandits and wishes he could use some of his children. But the cult is low on resources after the deaths of Zeno and the old man. He sees this as the perfect opportunity to show his power. The major corporate alliance is just a pawn for him, and he needs them to stay afloat until he completes his preparations. Getten remembers an encounter with Sid when he posed as the stylish bandit slayer, responsible for taking away Getten's eyesight. The story shifts to a scene where Sid is practicing sword fighting with Alexia, and she easily defeats him. Sid compliments her sword skills. They then buy some dumplings and chat while eating. Sid mentions that Alexia will keep improving if she continues like this. He wonders if she had a change in her mindset, or if she discovered something new, because these are usually the reasons for a sudden change in a person. Alexia reveals that she still craves more power. Sid doesn't ask why, but she explains anyway. She tells him that Rose has gone off on her own, and the King of Oriana is dead. Through all these events, all she could do was watch. She feels the need for more power because while they live their everyday lives, the world keeps moving forward. She's worried about being left behind if she doesn't keep up. Alexia mentions that time seems to be passing more quickly since she actively decided to move forward. She believes it must be nice to be as carefree as Sid and hopes he can continue to live that way. The story shifts to Sid, who is using the name John Smith, having ramen at a stall. He meets someone who knows Yukime, and she informs him that the production is complete. Yukime then tells John that they've set up their production unit in an abandoned mine that was previously under Viscount Grease's control. Currently, it's run by a local magistrate who has fallen apart, and they don't have any extra personnel to inspect the mine. They are exporting the bills to Lawless City, and after that, they're using a hidden distribution channel to introduce them to the royal capital of Midgar. John takes a look at both real and fake notes, and Yukime wonders if he can tell which one is fake. John says it's obvious and points out differences like the quality of paper and ink bleed. He says he doesn't need to point out more differences. They are sure that one of these is fake, but they don't know which one. Yukime suggests making new bills from scratch, but Shadow intervenes, saying there's no need for that as only he can distinguish between them. Yukime decides to start distributing the bills right away, and she mentions that when more of these bills are in circulation, the authorities will start looking for the source. She counts on John to handle that as planned, but asks him not to interfere with her plans regarding Getten. She reveals that Getten took away her mother, friends, and her whole village, and now it's her turn to take everything from him. John agrees and urges her to be careful not to choose the wrong path. The story then shifts to Alpha and her group discovering the existence of fake bills. Alpha believes that their decision to accept their competitors' notes has been successful. Gamma explains that they did this to undermine their rival's currency, but Alpha wonders how much of the fake money is out there. Gamma reassures her that it's not much, and the customers who used them weren't aware that the bills were fake. Alpha is concerned if the Alliance knows about this, and Gamma says they haven't realized it yet. They are continuing to issue more fake bills without any concern. Alpha asks Gamma to make the Alliance aware of this, as if the citizens find out, it could lead to a crisis. It might create doubt about paper money, which could harm their business. Alpha wonders if their plan was always to cause a credit collapse. She doubts this, as it would harm the Alliance as well. Alpha asks Gamma to find out where the fake bills are coming from and who might be behind it. The scene then cuts to Garter informing Getten about the counterfeit bills. Getten asks which one is fake, and Garter believes it's the poorly made one but isn't sure. Getten instructs him to find out its origin. Getten realizes that the number of banknotes in circulation now exceeds the total value of the Alliance's assets. This gives them credit, and the same goes for Mitsugoshi. Getten understands that credit is what gives paper money its value. If the world discovers the fake bills, it will lead to panic and doubt about the authenticity of real bills, causing a credit collapse. This is why they've prepared to circulate their counterfeit paper bills, bankrupting both the Alliance and Mitsugoshi. This mission was given to him by the cult, but the plan wasn't supposed to take effect until after they had recovered all the hidden assets within the Alliance. Geddon realizes it will take time to recover those assets, and he questions if the cult understood this when they initiated their plan. He knows that the cult would lose a lot of money if he allows this to happen. The scene shifts to number 664, 665, and Rose getting on a train in Lawless City, which is carrying the counterfeit bills. Number 664 tells the others that their mission is to recover the fake bills and advises Rose not to make decisions on her own, but follow her orders since she's the leader. They board the train and notice that it has no security, but Rose sees some threads on the train. Unfortunately, they get captured by John's threads. Number 664 tries to use her slime knife to cut the threads, but they are too strong. Rose asks John who he is, and he introduces himself. Rose tries to attack him, but John stops her with his threads. He says he knew they would be the first to figure out his plan, but it's too early for them to know more. He then throws them out of the train. Rose wants to chase the train, but 664 stops her, explaining that they'd fall into the same trap without a plan. The train moves out of sight, and 664 suggests reporting this to Gamma for now. Rose wonders why she is so weak. This is episode 6 of the Eminence in Shadow 2nd season. The story continues as the elite member of Shadow Garden reports the situation to his comrades. Alpha reflects on the fact that he has defeated 3 elite members of the organization. Gamma expresses her unfamiliarity with John Smith's name and speculates about his origin, wondering if he is a named child or a resident of the Lawless City. However, their conversation is interrupted by Rose, who states that John Smith's skills surpass even the most skilled fighters. She believes that he can predict their every move and compares his power to that of the 7 Shadows. Despite number 664's attempt to silence her, Rose insists on fighting John Smith once again. Number 664 asks number 66 to shut Rose's mouth, and they leave the room. Alpha sighs, realizing that this is another problem they have to deal with. Gamma informs Alpha that she has assigned Zeta to gather more information on the issue. Alpha assumes that since Zeta has not contacted them, the mission is progressing well. However, Gamma informs him that the Cult of Diablos is putting up more resistance than they had anticipated. Alpha expresses her desire to finish the mission quickly so that they can relax together. She suggests sending Delta to deal with John Smith, a plan to which Gamma agrees. John Smith is reading his diary when he suddenly senses something and looks out the train window. He sees Delta running parallel to the train at super speed and she jumps inside, aggressively attacking him. However, John easily stops her and tries to capture her. Delta manages to dodge his attacks and ends up destroying the carriage. John praises her for removing his overhead defense, but he states that it won't do any good. He attacks again, destroying all the rubble. Delta struggles to move as she is buried under the debris. John remarks that the fate of a beast is to crawl along the ground, and that he knows the Shadow Garden will figure it out first, although it's too soon. Delta recognizes that John Smith is a shadow, and joyfully jumps at him. The scene changes, and Shadow asks Delta what brought her there. Delta explains that she was hunting, and when Shadow asks who she was hunting, she reveals that it was John Smith. After a moment, Shadow says Delta that he is John Smith. Delta admits that she can't beat John Smith, and that she plans to report it to Alpha. John Smith asks her to listen to him. Shadow explains to Delta that he is currently on a top-secret mission that can only be accomplished by a super-elite secret agent. Delta becomes excited and expresses her desire to participate in this mission as well. However, Shadow explains that this mission is something only he can handle. He warns Delta that if she talks about John Smith to Alpha, her mission will be compromised as it is crucial to keep everything a secret. He asks Delta not to disclose any information to anyone. Delta reveals that she is currently on a mission for Alpha, but Shadow assures her that he will give her a new mission. He reminds her of the rules of the Shadow Garden, stating that when he assigns a mission, it takes priority over any other tasks, including Alpha's mission. Although Delta worries about Alpha's reaction, Shadow assures her that Alpha will understand, as the mission he is about to give her is to save the world. He promises Delta a reward upon completion of the mission, but specifies that it should be something he can provide without much effort or money. Delta eagerly agrees to undertake the mission, and listens attentively as Shadow explains that she needs to hunt down a villain named Juggernaut in the Lawless City's Black Tower. Despite Shadow's insistence on the reward meeting his criteria, Delta still believes that Shadow will fulfill her desires. Shadow, however, senses unease about sending her on this dangerous mission but remains resolved to save the world. He is confident that Alpha will be understanding, and that everything will be fine when the weather warms up. Gamma approaches Alpha and shares an intriguing discovery. Gamma reveals that she has found evidence of a fierce battle at the mission site, suggesting that it was triggered by a specific object being cut. As Alpha looks on with shock, Gamma further explains that Delta, a trusted member of their team, would never abandon a mission without a strong reason. She believes that Delta's actions were driven by her loyalty to Alpha and her refusal to defy an order. Deeply concerned, Alpha instructs Gamma to continue investigating the incident with the goal of recovering the girl's body. Gamma, however, shifts the conversation to a pressing issue: the alarming increase in counterfeit notes circulating in the economy. She warns that if this continues unchecked, citizens will lose trust in paper money, leading to a surge in demands for redemption. This would pose significant problems for Mitsugoshi, as they lack the necessary resources to meet the expected demand. Sensing the urgency, Gamma proposes developing a plan to address this issue promptly. Alpha then reveals a shocking truth: this chaos was exactly what John Smith had intended all along. His objective was not merely to profit from fake bills, but to instigate a trade war between the major corporate alliances, plunging them into a credit crisis and eventual bankruptcy. In this turmoil, John Smith planned to seize control and accumulate all the wealth for himself. Gamma finally realizes that Smith's scheme was not about making occasional profits, but rather about creating a market that consistently generated profits for him. Meanwhile, two individuals approach Get and express their concern about the circulation of counterfeit notes, explaining that the cult will suffer significant losses if this continues. One of the men challenges Get, emphasizing the importance of the situation and the need to prioritize it above personal wishes. In response, Getten decisively decapitates the challenger and inquires about John Smith. The other man then reveals that John Smith obstructed their investigation into the counterfeit notes. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Getten orders Garter to establish checkpoints at the royal capital for thorough inspections of all incoming and outgoing items. Garter attempts to dissuade Get, citing potential problems with the royal family, but Getten asserts his dominance by killing the other man present and demonstrating his authority. He commands his servant to do whatever it takes to uncover the origin of these counterfeit notes. Meanwhile, Iris and Alexia unexpectedly encounter each other in the city. Iris expresses surprise at seeing Alexia back at the castle, to which Alexia explains that the academy is still under reconstruction. As a result, she decided it would be easier to access specific books in the palace archive. Alexia shares various subjects she has been studying, and Iris questions whether Alexia would give up her sword to become a scholar. Alexia denies this, clarifying that her studies serve to broaden her perspective of the world. She reflects on the many things she noticed the previous spring and believes that unless she possesses the wit to wield her sword strategically, she will always remain an ignorant warrior. Alexia asserts that to wield her sword in an important place, she must earn the right to be there, emphasizing that it is not always necessary to use a sword to reach such a prestigious position. Having realized this lesson late, Alexia expresses her commitment to dedicating herself solely to studying from now on. Upon hearing this, Iris simply leaves Alexia talking to herself and continues on her way. Meanwhile, Beta explains to Shadow about the rumors circulating regarding fake bills. She suggests that the royal family will soon start relocating, and as expected, Beta mentions that the creation of unauthorized checkpoints has had a significantly negative impact on the market, with immeasurable consequences. While Beta speaks, Shadow diligently writes down every detail. Beta finds this strange, but Shadow explains that it's necessary to document these occurrences since they will affect the world. Beta apologizes and continues with the explanation. Beta emphasizes that addressing these rumors should occur at the state level since the situation has the potential to escalate rapidly. Shadow mentions that something doesn't make sense, piquing Beta's curiosity. However, Shadow clarifies that he is not referring to his report. Beta resumes her research, but mid-discussion, she interrupts herself, mentioning an important point about her report. In this case, Beta reveals that they've sent Delta to hunt down John Smith but have lost contact with her. This revelation leads Beta to suggest that Delta may have been killed. Shadow pretends to be unaware, and suggests that Delta may simply be in a distant location. Beta wipes away her tears and tries to believe that Delta is in a better place. Beta further explains that John Smith is an exceptionally skilled fighter, and requests that Shadow pursue him. However, Shadow dismisses the idea, stating that he is preoccupied with other matters. As he prepares to leave, Beta stops him and emphasizes the need to destroy or encrypt any classified documents in that location. Shadow showcases the encrypted note to Beta, impressing her with his encryption skills. He challenges her to decipher it, promising to share his wisdom if she succeeds. Shadow then returns to the train. On the train, two black market traders engage in a heated debate about Getten's ideas until they are interrupted by Shadow's arrival. Initially terrified, the men find solace in the belief that they will be safe as long as they hide from John Smith. Alpha appears to confront Shadow, analyzing his fighting style, and discovering that she is fighting Shadow himself. However, Shadow asserts that he has abandoned that name. Alpha questions Shadow about Delta's whereabouts, to which he responds that he merely sent her to a distant location. Hearing this, Alpha becomes agitated because his response does not satisfy her inquiry. Despite the language barrier, Alpha expresses her desire to support Shadow and gradually understand him. Alpha declares that she wants to be by the side of the man who saved her life. Shadow states that she will eventually understand him once everything is over. He attempts to bind her with his threats, but she manages to break free and launches an attack. Shadow explains that although she can transform into mist form, she still needs to solidify herself to execute a genuine attack. He demonstrates that although her mist form makes her difficult to hit, it allows her to fly. Shadow gathers a powerful force of air and launches an attack, causing Alpha to be sent flying. After arriving at their destination, Yukime reveals her plan to weaken the large corporate alliance by exchanging almost all the fake notes for gold. She explains that the coffers of the alliance will surely be empty, while she secretly accumulates several authentic notes. To further disrupt the system, she suggests leaving the authentic notes in a public place where people can see them, triggering a race to reclaim their money. Yukime predicts that the MCAS supply of funds will be insufficient, leading to its downfall. She anticipates this chaos extending to Mitsugoshi as well, leaving no resources to exchange the circulating notes. Meanwhile, she believes the government will be too occupied with attempting to control the situation. Yukime and Shadow plan to disappear without a trace during this opportune moment, taking all incriminating evidence with them. Yukime emphasizes that the influx of counterfeit notes causes the total currency in circulation to increase, leading to a significant rise in prices, and the potential onset of inflation. She deems this the perfect time to execute their plan. Yukime praises Shadow for his quick deduction and acknowledges that the plan wouldn't have been possible without him. Changing the subject, Yukime delves into her past, recounting how her village was engulfed in a war for the great hero Shiva's fallen crown. Weaker clans like hers struggled to survive as stronger clans sought dominance. In an attempt to secure allies, her clan formed ties with like-minded clans. Yukime reveals her marriage to the son of the patriarch of the Great Wolves, swordsman Getten, whom she admired. The village held their union in high regard. However, everything changed when the conflict reached the nearby large clans, resulting in the complete destruction of Yukime's village. Getten approached her, offering pills to gain power and save themselves, claiming that neglecting power led to the death of a woman close to them. Yukime refused and attacked Getten, intensifying their enmity. Despite losing her village and resorting to a life as a prostitute on the battlefield, Yukime's true ambition remains to find Getten and strip him of everything he has. With determination, she sets off on this quest, alongside John Smith. The next day, things took a troublesome turn. Shops in the capital refused to accept alliance notes, leaving people lining up at banks to swap their money. As citizens waited, they noticed alliance banks shutting down, one after the other. This fueled their suspicion that the rumors might be true, that these notes were now nothing more than worthless scraps of paper. The scene then shifts to Gator updating Getten. Despite their efforts, they hadn't yet uncovered where the fake bills were coming from. However, they did manage to identify the mastermind, Yukime from the White Tower in Lawless City. A carriage from the Snow Fox Corporation was used to transport the exchanged gold coins. Getten, upon hearing this, initially considered it might be a coincidence. He recalls knowing that Yukime had been involved in prostitution. Suddenly, the sound of bells reaches him, and he realizes they belong to the same bell he had given to Yukime. Urgently, he instructs Gator to stop the carriage. We then see Alpha informing Gamma that Shadow no longer needs her because he has reached heights only he can attain. Gamma tells Alpha about the unstoppable fall of the major corporate alliance. They've closed all their storefronts, escalating unrest among citizens. Riots are breaking out at bank branches, with customers demanding money exchanges. If things continue this way, the bank vault will soon be empty, and they won't survive the credit collapse. Gamma wishes they had something to reassure the marketplace, like giant stacks of gold coins. However, Alpha explains that it doesn't matter anymore. Shadow intentionally put counterfeit bills into circulation, causing the credit collapse. This was his plan, and he has abandoned them. Gamma insists that Shadow would never leave them, but Alpha reveals that they failed to meet his expectations. Despite providing the best environment and knowledge, they couldn't live up to what he wanted. Gamma finds it hard to believe, and Alpha recalls promising to give her life to Shadow. Neo then enters the scene, noticing that both Alpha and Gamma are feeling down. She provides a report, revealing evidence that Getten was leading an operation for the cult of Diablo. He conspired to circulate counterfeit bills, aiming to bankrupt Mitsugoshi. Gamma is surprised that Getten was willing to destroy himself along with them, even without knowing their connection with Shadow Garden. During their economic wars, Shadow saw the truth and took action on his own. That's when Alpha realizes that Shadow orchestrated the entire situation. He changed his name, severed ties with them, and initiated the circulation of counterfeit bills before the cult could execute their plan. Alpha, however, is puzzled about Shadow's motives. Beta joins the conversation, mentioning that Zeta managed to decipher a message from Shadow. As Alpha reads the message, tears fill her eyes. In the message, Shadow apologizes for appearing as a traitor and explains that he has a plan. To execute it, he had to forsake his former name, print counterfeit bills with an accomplice, and store the recovered gold coins in the facility where they had previously rescued his sister. Although he acknowledges that they might resent him for this, he believes it was for the best. Beta is astonished by Shadow's actions, and Gamma thinks they should have known. She points out that Shadow identified the cult's plot and took preemptive action by circulating counterfeit bills before the cult could make a move. He amassed significant funds, ensuring Mitsugoshi's survival during the credit collapse and effectively removing the alliance from the cult's support. Beta realizes that Shadow's deeper understanding of credit creation made all of this possible. Alpha adds that Shadow concealed his identity to sever his connection with them and hide the link between Mitsugoshi and Shadow Garden. He strategically placed his counterfeit printing operation in a familiar location, even marking the vault's location. Beta suggests that Shadow was fooling his allies before fooling his enemy, and now they just need to collect the gold. Gamma wonders about Delta, and to their joy, Delta returns. They are relieved to see Delta safe and sound. Delta shares that she went on a secret mission, withholding details as it was classified. Alpha then realizes that Shadow entrusted Delta with a specific task. The scene shifts to John Smith, who has been busy dealing with people trying to uncover the secret of the counterfeit bills. He's unfazed by this, knowing that Yukime is not motivated by money, meaning he gets to keep it all for himself. When he returns to the hideout where the money is stored, he discovers that it has vanished. The girls working for Yukime inform him that they've lost contact with her, suspecting Getten's involvement. John, enraged that Getten might have taken his money, vows to retrieve what is precious to him. The story then transitions to Gan fighting Yukime, and it's evident that Yukime has brought Getten to his knees. Getten regrets not having the power Yukime possesses to prevent others from taking what belongs to them. Despite Getten's past actions, Yukime acknowledges that he saved their village and her life. She hopes the man she once knew is still within him. As Yukime attempts to leave, bidding farewell to Getten, he uses a tear of Diablo to attack her from behind, enhancing his strength and restoring his eyesight. However, before Getten can deliver a finishing blow, John intervenes. Getten is surprised that John willingly came to be killed by him. John clarifies that he came to retrieve something precious, and they engage in a fight. Yukime contemplates John's compassion, as he called her precious. John successfully defeats Getten, who, in his final moments, mentions that John's power is similar to the one who took his eyesight. Getten expresses regret for not having this power earlier to prevent others from taking from him. He points to Yukime, indicating that he leaves his treasure to John before passing away. John acknowledges that his treasure is now in good hands. He saves the injured Yukime from falling and heals her wounds. Yukime realizes that John was the one who saved her from Getten years ago and expresses gratitude through tears. In a reflective moment, John believes that Getten pointed at the snow, suggesting that the coins are buried underneath it. The story shifts to a group of Dark Knights led by Iris, conducting a raid on the Alliance. They discover that the Alliance's vault is empty. Iris, suspecting foul play, orders the arrest of Garter for disrupting the marketplace. Meanwhile, Yukime returns to her associates, who are relieved to see her unharmed. They inquire about Smith, and she informs them that he has gone to perform a proper burial. Observing the empty vault, Yukime receives a communication from Alpha, claiming to be from Shadow Garden. Alpha deduces from Yukime's reaction that John did not inform her of the recent events. Alpha, knowledgeable about Getten and Yukime, reveals that the Alliance has been destroyed. However, they managed to recover what they needed before the royal investigation began. Alpha hands Yukime a letter from Getten, acknowledging that its messy handwriting is characteristic of him. Alpha explains the influence of the cult of Diablos, a group exploiting people's weaknesses and ensnaring them in darkness. They are actively fighting against the cult, with Shadow leading the charge. Mitsugoshi is revealed as a front for Shadow Garden, and Alpha confesses that Shadow has been orchestrating events from the beginning. Alpha expresses apologies for collecting all the gold coins, clarifying that it's crucial for their survival amid the imminent credit collapse. Additionally, they have taken control of all the Alliance's outlets, rendering their market position obsolete. Alpha reveals that this was Shadow's overarching plan, and she extends an invitation for Yukime to join their ranks. Despite the complex situation, Yukime has no intention of treating Shadow as a traitor. Alpha proposes that Yukime becomes a part of their organization, realizing that Alpha envisions her as an asset in their collective efforts. Yukime accepts this proposal, recognizing the necessity of joining forces with Shadow Garden. The scene shifts to Shadow, working alongside Delta, digging holes in the snow to uncover the money supposedly buried underneath. Despite their efforts, Shadow finds nothing. He notices a lack of communication from Yukime, and Mitsugoshi seems to be doing well. Delta questions whether Shadow will follow through on their plans after finishing the holes. In response, Shadow assures Delta that he will do what he can within his ability. He reveals his intention to embark on a journey, and urges Delta to consider what she wants, promising to discuss it upon his return. Shadow contemplates that the others might be angry with him for his actions, expecting they'll need time to cool off. He plans to return casually at the end of winter, without apologizing, to frustrate them into giving up. As Shadow leaves, Delta makes a discovery while digging and attempts to share it with Shadow, but he has already departed. The story continues as we see Skell and Poe at the door of Sid's room, attempting to wake him up. However, Sid doesn't respond. They notice that the door is open, enter inside, and comment that today is a great day to pick up some girls. They realize Sid isn't there and think he's careless for leaving his door open. Skell then notices tickets to Mitsugoshi Hot Springs on one of Sid's desks. Poe thinks these are premium items that not even the highest-ranking nobles can get, and they wonder what Sid is doing with them. Skell thinks that if even rich guys can't get these tickets, their chances of success in picking up girls will skyrocket if they are in possession of them. This might even help them get somewhere with the glamorous girls of Mitsugoshi. They notice there are 6 tickets. They decide to go to Mitsugoshi and invite Nu, who is working outside, to join them at the hot spring resort. Nu takes them inside after seeing the tickets in their hands. She asks them how they came into possession of these tickets, mentioning that they are only given to a chosen few. She wonders how these idiots who are outside their establishment got their hands on them. Skell stutters and gives the excuse that they received the tickets as a gift. However, Nu doesn't believe them and deduces that they could only have stolen them or found them on the floor. Under pressure, Poe reveals that he took the tickets from his friend Sid's room, stating that Sid would have given them the tickets since they are friends. Nu wonders if they are referring to young Master Sid Cage Nu, and Poe confirms that they are. They then use Sid's name to ask Nu out on a date again. Nu tells them to shut up, thinking that Lord Shadow wants numbers to assemble. She asks if Sid will be present on this date, and Skell mentions that he will be. Nu then reflects on how she never imagined that Shadow would use the students of the academy to send such a complicated code. She wonders what Shadow wants from them and decides to seek counsel from the 7 Shadows. As she tries to leave, Skell and Poe ask her about her answer for the date. Nu angrily mentions that she will consider it seriously. The scene then shifts to Shadow Garden, where a meeting is being held to discuss this matter. Alpha believes that Shadow must have a purpose in mind for inviting them to the hot springs. She asks Eda, the one who designed Mitsugoshi Hot Springs land, to explain it. Eda mentions that it's a relaxation resort complex set to open next week, themed around the legend of the Dragon's Tears. Alpha asks her not to read the entire description straight from the brochure. Epsilon reflects that Lord Shadow told them about the legend of the Dragon Tears on a faithful day. In a flashback, it's revealed that after dealing with a faction of the Cult of Diablos, a dying member mentioned that they would never get their hands on the Dragon's Tears. Shadow realized something and asked the girls if they had heard about the Dragon's Tears, which they had in the region's folklore. He instructed them to dig up the entire region, promising a dazzling radiance. 3 days later, Shadow left in a hurry, and Alpha discovered a hot spring. They built the hot spring resort, believing Shadow had something else in mind, as he was interested in the legend of the Dragon Tear. Epsilon notes the absence of dragon magic, and Zeta suggests the dragon might be a metaphor related to the cult. Gamma doubts their knowledge, stating it's impossible to be sure with current data. Alpha is confident they'll learn more if they go on the hot springs date with Lord Shadow. Epsilon mentions there are 6 tickets, with 3 going to Lord Shadow and his friends. This means only 3 of the 7 Shadows can accompany him. Beta wonders which 3 will go, and Nu claims she was asked personally, but Alpha disagrees, stating the mission is only for the 7 Shadows. Epsilon accuses Alpha of power harassment, referring to the wisdom of Shadow. Alpha insists on going but is interrupted by others. An argument ensues about which 3 of the 7 Shadows will join Shadow on the mission. Unable to reach a conclusion through discussion, they decide to settle it with a rock-paper-scissors match to determine the 3 accompanying Lord Shadow on the date. The scene then shifts to Giller's meeting Skell and Poe outside the hot spring resorts the next week. Beta notices that someone is missing, and Poe tries to change the subject. Zeta, however, asserts angrily that she can't see Sid with them. Po reassures them that Sid is just running late, lifting the girls' spirits. They agree that it would have been better if they had known from the start. The group decides to change into their swimsuits, but Po is concerned about the rule of having an equal number of guys and girls on a group date. He worries that one of the girls might end up as a fifth wheel. To buy time, they decide to tell a story that Sid will be joining them later. The scene then shifts to Elizabeth and Marie joining them, and Skell and Po feel that today is the day they will become men. The scene then cuts to the 7 shadows changing into their swimsuits. Alpha expresses disbelief that Shadow is not present. Beta resolves to be better this time, as she feels responsible for causing trouble in the last 2 outings. Alpha suggests that Shadow might not come at all, but Gamma believes he may have entrusted the mission entirely to them. Alpha also considers the possibility that Shadow might still join them and emphasizes the need for everyone to be prepared. The girls then change into their swimsuits. We then see Skell, Po, and 2 of the girls playing volleyball by the pool. Delta attacks Zeta with the volleyball, causing a diversion that sends the ball towards Skell, sending him flying into the pool. Delta and Zeta start fighting. Gamma and Epsilon notice this from afar and wonder what the 3 of them are up to. Gamma thinks they should have been chosen for the mission instead, but Alpha assures them that it's fine as the others seem to be having fun. She reflects that it's been a while since they spent time just playing around, speculating that perhaps this is what Shadow wanted all along. She suggests that the break might be for their well-being, considering their continuous battles without rest. Alpha clarifies that she's just speculating, lacking the ability to comprehend what Shadow is truly thinking. Etta then mentions that she has detected an abnormal magical signature underground. Skell and Po are seen floating around the pool, unaware of how they got there. They wonder where the girls went, and Skell speculates that they might be in the girls' bath. Po reveals that this place caters to the needs of every visitor, including swimsuit-less girls' baths. Skell suggests peeping on the girls if they are bathing without swimsuits, considering it their duty. The scene then shifts to the girls taking bath. Beta contemplates that if she doesn't take action in this mission, Shadow will perceive her only as a delicate elven princess. Zeta suggests that they may need to reconsider Lord Shadow's real objective, emphasizing that it keeps coming back to the dragon tears. The legend behind the dragon tears is revealed. Once upon a time, a kind and gentle princess lived in this land. One day, she rescued a small dragon separated from its clutch, and they became friends, growing together. However, their days of peace ended when war broke out. The dragon fought valiantly to protect the princess, even when wounded. Upon returning, the dragon found the royal capital in ruins. The princess, on the brink of death, shed a single tear. The dragon, in turn, wept uncontrollably, and hot tears flooded the land, covering the entire kingdom. The princess awoke to find a mysterious stream of water filled with the essence of life, but the dragon was nowhere to be seen. Calling the dragon's name yielded no response. Zeta speculates that what Shadow desires may be hidden in this tale. Etta considers focusing on the water in this case, mentioning that their research indicates it's normal hot spring water. Meanwhile, Skell and Po attempt to spy on the girls, but an anti-peeping system installed in the wall sprays something in their eyes to stop them. This makes their eyes tear up, and when the tears fall into the hot spring, a reaction occurs. Etta then realizes that the hot spring is reacting to tears. They try to make Skell and Po cry more, but Etta notices that the reaction isn't any stronger. Zeta then reminds them that in the story, they talked about the princess's tears, and Etta looks at Beta. She mentions that Beta called herself an elven princess just now and states that the wisdom of the shadow always requires a sacrifice. Etta manages to make Beta cry by putting her down constantly, and her tears trigger a major reaction from the hot springs. After the reaction, a dragon forms out of the water in the pools, and Alpha wonders if this is what Shadow was trying to tell them. She thinks they have to do something, so they put on their slime bodysuits. They notice that the suits have color, and Etta states that it's to prevent the public from finding out that they are Shadow Garden. All of them then fight the water dragon, and Alpha lands the final blow. This makes golden tears rain down from the sky, and Epsilon thinks that this must be what Lord Shadow was talking about. Etta then notices that the hot springs have been imbued with magical properties and can now improve beauty and health. The dragon's soul then ascends after wiping out Beta's tears, and Alpha thinks that Shadow must have wanted to rescue the soul of that kind and gentle dragon. The girls then pretend that this whole ordeal was part of their special event based on the dragon tear legend and sell some limited edition merchandise to celebrate their grand opening. Alpha then thinks that everything worked out well, and Gamma states that the damage to their facilities was also light. Alpha then thanks Shadow for this day off, and elsewhere we see that Skell and Po have completely forgotten what they did today. Po says that in exchange for becoming men they have lost their memories. He explains that it is a big step for virgins like them, but for normal guys, it is a very small step. Then, they say that they will not stop as their journey has just begun. The story continues, as we find Sid taking a break in an inn located in the Oriana Kingdom. The innkeeper serves him tea and laments that due to the ongoing war, the soldiers have confiscated all the valuable items, including coffee. She expresses sorrow over the deteriorating state of their once beautiful main streets, blaming the war effort for the devastation. Sid reflects on his journey, realizing that leaving the Midgar Kingdom allowed him to explore different places and, in turn, reevaluate his goals. Initially, Sid embarked on a journey of self-discovery, aspiring to become the Eminence in shadow. However, he admits to lacking a clear vision of what that truly means. His actions thus far were driven by a desire to embody the elusive concept of the Eminence in shadow, without a definite understanding of the path he should follow. Sid contemplates whether he should continue in the same direction or reassess his objectives. Amidst these musings, Sid is accompanied by two individuals, numbered 664 and 665, sharing a meal. Rose, another character, is also present at the inn. She experiences a distressing nightmare involving the death of her father, who expresses unforgiveness towards her. Waking up from the nightmare, Rose reflects on the devastation caused by the war, even in the previously beautiful first castle town. Joining Shadow Garden, Rose believed she could make a difference and save her kingdom by becoming stronger. The following day, 664 and 665 discuss their upcoming mission, led by 559, a formidable fighter within their group. 664 recalls that 559 earned the right to challenge the numbers by defeating number 89. Concerned about Rose, 664 asks if something is bothering her, offering to talk about it. Rose dismisses the inquiry, and later that night, they meet with 559 to discuss the mission details. 559 briefs them on the mission, revealing that a stronghold recently fell to Perv's faction. The targeted location is a relatively insignificant castle town with little strategic importance. The cult has discreetly sent their elite force, the Children of Diablo, on a mission to a particular location. This suggests that there's something significant there, and their objective is to uncover its nature. In the group, 559 questions Rose about her selection for this mission. Rose explains that it's because of her familiarity with Fort First, but 559 clarifies that there's another reason. 559 personally requested Rose for the mission because she received her powers directly from Lord Shadow. Rose wonders if this is different for 664 and 665, who came under the guidance of the Seven Shadows. 665 confirms that, in Shadow Garden, it's true for almost everyone except the Seven Shadows. 559 adds that she, along with 664 and 665, is an exception, but she deems Rose as weak. Declaring loyalty to Lord Shadow, 559 asserts her commitment to eliminating anyone unworthy of his greatness. Observing the Children of Diablos moving towards some ruins, 559 inquires about the direction. Rose reveals that the path leads to a memorial for warriors who fought against the demon Diablos. The scene shifts to the ruins, where 664 identifies Quadoy the Gale as a potential cult leader. Quadoy, accompanied by the first children, uses a card similar to Nelson's to activate the ruins. The Queen arrives and opens a vault with a ring inside, claimed to be the legendary ring protected by hero Freya. Despite 664's reminder that this was supposed to be a reconnaissance mission, 559 insists that the ring is the key and they must retrieve it. 664 is left wondering about the significance, but 559 dismisses the need for details. Rose, concerned for her mother in the vault, insists on waiting, but 559 disregards it and attempts to attack the Queen. Rose intervenes, questioning 559's motive for attacking her mother. Quadoy expresses surprise that Shadow Garden found them, commenting on the strained relationship. He notes the presence of the missing Princess Rose and requests her to save her mother. 559 retaliates by attacking Rose, prompting the first children to protect her and the Queen. 559 asserts that Rose isn't worthy of serving Lord Shadow, declaring that both Rose and her mother will meet their end by her hand. Afterward, Gamma receives news that the team sent to Fort First is in battle, and Rose witnessed her mother with the cult. Pervashat and the Night Beyond Man, Mordred, are absent, raising suspicions of a possible trap. New assures Gamma that the situation is too elaborate for a trap. Despite constant interference with ruin robbery, Mordred, the shadowy figure controlling the Oriana Kingdom, has yet to reveal himself. Gamma acknowledges Mordred's patience in orchestrating events from the shadows. Gamma learns from a newspaper that Rose has returned to Oriana Kingdom, and Pervasat appears restless. With Pervasat dealing with civil unrest, security around the Oriana capital has lightened. Gamma instructs Nui to tell Lambda to send reinforcements into the capital. She decides to let the cult have Princess Rose for now, increasing the likelihood of Pervasat and Mordred making a move. Gamma reflects on how everything started when Rose joined them and the cult, wondering about the vision of their lord for the endgame. Meanwhile, Sid contemplates the conflict in the Oriana Kingdom, where there's no clear heir to the throne. He sees an opportunity for an Eminence and Shadow to step in and look cool amidst the factional disputes. Upon learning of Rose's return to Oriana, Sid envisions a scenario where a mysterious figure guides her to victory and quells the strife, making her a perfect candidate for a new ruler. Intrigued by Rose's actions, Sid wonders if she aspires to become queen and potentially a tyrant. He decides that, as the Eminence in Shadow, he will support her in becoming the next monarch. Sid envisions Rose standing as a tyrant before the heroes, with the Eminence in Shadow eventually aiding the heroes against the tyrant they once supported. Sid sees an opportunity when militia men come to collect money from an inn owned by Marie. The inn owner, having given them money the day before, protests, but the men suggest she satisfy them with her body instead. Sid, pretending to be weak, intervenes but ends up getting beaten by the men, who leave with the money. Marie, revealing she used to be a prostitute in the lawless city and is familiar with such violence, assures Sid it's fine. Later, Sid attempts to pay Marie for her troubles, but she refuses, grateful for Sid saving her. As Sid leaves, he reflects on his recent attempts to make Tyrant Rose a reality. He recounts trying life in a correctional facility and orchestrating a jailbreak. Joining the volunteer army, he helped them win from the shadows but felt overshadowed by older members who received the glory. Unsatisfied with his progress, Sid overhears the militia men talking about treasure in ruins on the other side of the mountains. In another place, Marie is worried about not having enough money to cover her expenses. She regrets not asking Sid for help and contemplates the possibility of selling her body again. To her surprise, she hears a sound at her door, and upon investigating, she finds a money pouch. She catches a glimpse of Shadow and realizes he has been watching over her. Meanwhile, 559 is engaged in a fierce battle against the First Children, having defeated everyone except Quadoy. Quadoy is astonished at 559's continuous 3-day fight but notices her weakening. He easily defeats her, planning to torture her and her team members. With Rose now in his possession, Quadoy believes he can surpass Perv and become the next Knight of the Rounds. Just when things seem dire, Shadow intervenes. He uses his powers to heal and regenerate 559's severed arm. Empowered by Shadow's intervention, 559 defeats Quadoy. Shadow then heals 664 and 665, leaving them puzzled about his unexpected appearance. When Shadow asks about the location of the ruins, 559 informs him that 666 has betrayed Shadowguard. Misunderstanding, Shadow asks for an order to eliminate 666. However, 664 clarifies that Rose was attempting to save her mother. 559 reveals that because of Rose, a key was stolen, leaving Shadow confused. As Shadow learns about Rose's impending marriage to Perv Asshat from a flyer, he becomes angry and vows to punish Rose for her betrayal. He decides to confront Rose. Glad that Lord Shadow supports her, 559 expresses concern for Rose's well-being. On his way to see Rose, Shadow ponders why Rose killed her father if she doesn't intend to become a tyrant. He believes Rose needs to be the next ruler for his Eminence and Shadow plan to succeed. The story continues as Lambda arrive in Oriana Kingdom's capital with some backup, and Omega wonders if that's all the help they're getting. Lambda reassures Omega that more reinforcements are coming. She's going back to organize the next group. There's something she needs to check with the people on site. Kai then tell her that Rose is rumored to have joined the enemy. Lambda agrees, explaining that Rose might have made this choice under tough circumstances. Still, Lambda emphasizes that Rose's disobedience has put her teammates in danger, and as her instructor, she feels responsible for passing judgment. Kai steps in, saying Lambda can't handle this anymore. Even the powerful 7 Shadows no longer have control over the situation. Lambda realizes that Shadow has taken charge of dealing with the matter. Omega adds that Lord Shadow is known for delivering harsh judgments to those who oppose them. She emphasizes that once Shadow decides on a plan, nobody can stand in his way. Meanwhile, we catch Sid practicing what he's going to say when he confronts Princess Rose. He decides that appearing dramatically from the sky in broad daylight might not be the best idea, so he opts to hop over the palace gate. Right before he can execute his plan, Epsilon shows up and invites Sid inside with her. Epsilon shares a unique fact about this country. They hold great respect for anyone whose art deserves it. That's why she can casually stroll into the royal palace whenever she wants. Sid wonders if this is why he is attending as her top student to get access, and Epsilon apologizes for the student reference, as Sid was the one who taught her everything. She then gets her big melons quite close to him. Sid, in his thoughts, notes that her chest feels about 99% slime. He then explained that Epsilon is using intricate magic to adjust her chest, making it move with her center of gravity. It seems like she's putting a lot of effort into this. She then asks Sid if he's thinking something, and he responds by saying he's just appreciating the results of her hard work. Epsilon shifts the conversation to a more serious topic, informing Sid that their spies have successfully infiltrated the palace and are waiting for the right moment. Then Duke Perv arrives and inquires if Epsilon is scheduled to perform this afternoon. Epsilon confirms, mentioning her plan to debut a new piece. Duke Perv expresses anticipation for the performance, and Epsilon shares her hope that her music can bring comfort to Princess Rose, who recently lost her father. However, Duke Perv informs that the princess won't be joining them today. Epsilon, thinking that Duke Perv might be concerned about his fiancée, acknowledges his worry. Duke Perv queries about the young man with Epsilon, and she introduces him as her favorite pupil. Other nobles with Duke Perv express surprise at Epsilon taking on apprentice, and Duke Perv questions if the young man has permission to enter the palace. Epsilon initially thought there wouldn't be an issue as she brought him as her guest, but Duke Perv informs them that the protocol has changed for the day. Epsilon suggests coming another day, but Duke Perv assures it's unnecessary. Instead, he proposes that the young man showcase his skills by playing a piece for them, as the nobles are curious about his musical prowess. As Sid contemplates Duke Perv Asshat's villainous style of dealing with even background character, he decides to respond as a background character who's somewhat skilled at the piano. Sid heads to the piano, sparking curiosity among the audience about Epsilon's apprentice's musical abilities. Sid reflects on the stark contrast between the jaded regular citizens and the luxurious lives of the nobility in this country. Determined to seek vengeance on behalf of the common folk, he begins playing the Moonlight Sonata. The maid in the crowd is captivated by his performance, and the rest of the audience shares a similar reaction. Meanwhile, Sid discreetly pilfers the belongings of the nobles. After the piano performance, Duke Perv asks for Sid's name, but Epsilon steps in, deferring the introduction until Sid completes his training. During their conversation, Sid notices a ring in Duke Perv's pocket, the same ring referred to as the key by 559. Sid takes the ring without revealing its significance. Sid decides to exploring the palace. A maid named Margaret approaches, offering to show Sid around. She reveals her dual role, also entrusted with caring for Princess Rose. Despite Sid's initial reluctance, Margaret insists, and he eventually accepts her offer. The scene shifts to Margaret showing Sid around a garden, expressing admiration for his earlier piano performance. She predicts he'll become a top-class pianist soon and reveals that some nobles are interested in him. Margaret proposes that if Sid works for them, he could earn up to 100 million zeni annually. Sid entertains the idea of becoming a musician to alleviate financial concerns for each gig. Margaret, eager to recruit him for her family, offers to handle everything for him. She becomes clingy, and Sid tries to distance himself. Sid inquires about Princess Rose's current location, and the maid questions if he has an interest in her. She reveals her past fondness for Rose, admiring her kindness and intelligence despite Rose's eccentric interest in barbaric arts like fencing. However, the maid laments the kingdom's current state, attributing its turmoil to Rose. Despite Rose's current whereabouts being a secret, the maid says that she is willing to share this to him, and disclose that Princess Rose has been confined to the West Tower. While escaping Margaret's ramblings, Sid encounters a fat knight who claims to be in love with Margaret. The knight warns Sid not to lay hands on her, as they are in love. However, it becomes apparent that the fat knight is just a misguided stalker. Sid escapes the knight's awkward proclamations. The scene then transitions to Princess Rose in the West Tower, reflecting on the consequences of her decisions for the country. She notices Sid climbing up to meet her, and hugs him, expressing her longing to see him. As they sit and talk, Rose asks Sid how he managed to reach her. Sid reveals he sneaked in as an apprentice to a pianist friend and expresses his intention to discuss her marriage. Rose firmly states that there's nothing to discuss, but Sid presses on, asking if the news about her impending marriage is true. Rose confirms it, and Sid urges her to recall the words she spoke before killing her father. Rose pleads with him not to bring up that painful day, and to forget about her, but Sid refuses. He points out their shared struggles. Rose grew up in a kingdom that looked down on fencers, choosing to be a knight despite rejection and loneliness. Sid empathizes, understanding her feelings. Rose insists she'll always understand Sid's dream, even if the world rejects it. Sid then confronts her about the contradiction in her actions. She stayed true to her way of life by stabbing her fiancé and killing her father, but now marrying him seems like a deviation. Sid argues that there's no reason for her to give up now. Rose insists she has nothing more to say and asks Sid to forget about her, urging him to find his own happiness. Sid refuses, stating he needs her. Rose expresses that her only wish is for him to forget her. Duke Perv enters the room, noticing the voices. Rose denies having a visitor, but Perv observes her tear-streaked face. When he tries to touch her, she resists. Perv, angered, grabs her by the neck, emphasizing their impending marriage and the impact on Queen Rhaena's life. Rose agrees to comply, and Sid, overhearing everything, decides to switch to Plan B. He then checks the ring and regrets taking it, wondering if it's the wedding ring. The scene shifts to 559 apologizing for the mission failure, blaming Rose. Epsilon refuses to label Rose a traitor, and plans to promote 559 in the future. Epsilon acknowledges their responsibility for not informing Rose about her mother, and Lord Shadow has taken control of the case. She then tells that Shadow contacted Rose, but didn't punish her, indicating a different plan. The current issue is the ring found in the ruins. Epsilon explains the legends of the Oriana Kingdom using the key's power to defeat enemies. Pressure on Perv might lead to the use of the key, causing catastrophic consequences. Sid emerges from the bath, and the girls pamper him. Sid confidently assures Epsilon that the mentioned issue will be resolved sooner than expected, surprising Epsilon and impressing 559. The scene shifts to Perv having a conversation with Mordred, updating him on the progress of their plan. Mordred emphasizes that if they can reclaim the power of Black Rose, their authority within the cult will be unshakable. He warns Perv to be cautious, as there are signs of potential interference. Perv assures Mordred that he has the Ring of Succession with him at all times, dismissing any concerns. Mordred promises Perv a seat in the Night of Rounds after their success, but reminds him not to make mistakes before marrying the princess. Perv acknowledges the warning. After the communication ends, Perv boasts that the key, the princess, and the kingdom are already under his control. He laughs and says that now even the Shadow Garden can't do anything to him. Then we see Queen Rhaena arrives looking for him, and it is revealed that they are having an affair. The story continues as we see a member of the Shadow Garden inside one of the cult's buildings. Zeta gazes into the night, unable to spot any men beyond. She realizes that the sought-after item has already been taken, signaling what she believes to be the downfall of Oriana Kingdom. Suddenly, a lackey from the cult attacks her, but Zeta swiftly deals with him, convinced that everything will unfold according to their lord's will. We then see Epsilon playing the piano in the palace. Sid, observing, recalls that Rose is distressed because Perv has taken her mother hostage. He wonders why this is bothering Rose when she has come so far. Sid resolves to use his influence and shadow techniques to free the hostage himself, believing it will pave the way for the birth of a legendary tyrant. Margaret arrives and expresses her concern about Sid's disappearance the day before. She shares that a suspicious guard, who caused unrest in the castle, has been removed for stealing food. Margaret assures Sid that she will protect him from the creepy man and his teacher, who aims to crush his talent. Epsilon joins the conversation, leading to a verbal altercation between Margaret and Epsilon for Sid's favor. However, Sid slips away using the substitution technique. The scene shifts to Epsilon pondering the calmness of everyone despite the impending war. Sid agrees that they appear unconcerned. Epsilon explains that Oriana's nobility dislikes violence, revering art instead, shaped by the influence of Black Rose throughout history. When Sid expresses a desire to see the Black Rose, Epsilon is surprised and warns of the danger. However, she vows to make it happen if that's what her lord wishes, leaving Sid puzzled by her emphasis on a mere flower. Following the events, Sid goes in search of the queen and discovers her in a romantic moment with Perv. The two are all affectionate, and Sid feels repulsed witnessing their intimacy. Sid realizes that this situation is problematic. He believes it's a complicated family issue, and if he informs Rose about it, her anger might trigger her transformation into a tyrant. The scene shifts to Margaret serving tea disrespectfully to Rose, who tries to engage with her, but Margaret leaves abruptly. Rose fears that Margaret will never smile at her again, but is determined to save her mother. While contemplating, she hears a noise, checks outside the window, but finds nothing. She notices Shadow drinking her tea and wonders if he's there to harm her. Apologizing for her betrayal, Rose is asked by Shadow to accompany him to learn the truth. Shadow reveals a scene of the queen being intimate with Perv. Perv informs the queen that the kingdom will soon be theirs. The queen admits drugging her husband for this purpose, and Perv expresses regret that he could have been more useful alive. The queen, cruelly, states that Rose should have been the first to die. Rose, appalled, vomits at this revelation. Shadow insists this is the truth and encourages Rose to rise as a tyrant, as the time is right. Despite continuing his explanation, Rose faints and Shadow apologizes. She wakes up in her room, questioning the purpose of her actions until now. Overwhelmed, she cries and wishes to return to happier days. Hearing a piano playing, she goes to the balcony and discovers Sid playing. She asks him to run away with her to an unknown place, citing the betrayals and forsaken feelings she's experienced. Despite everything, Sid has remained by her side. Sid shares that he likes the music, making it easier to see the world. He reveals he has divided the world into essential and non-essential things. Rose wonders why, and Sid explains that he has a dream, and to achieve it, he must dedicate his time and effort to meaningful pursuits while cutting ties with everything else. Rose believes she's the person Sid is talking about, thinking that Sid has sacrificed everything else for her. Sid explains that in the overly bright world, it's easy to lose focus on essential things. The excessive brightness causes distractions, making people overlook important matters. Sid prefers the softer glow of the moon, which prompts everyone to pay close attention, preventing them from losing sight of what truly matters. Using Shadow's voice, Sid asks Rose what she sees in this moonlit world before leaving. He leaves behind the succession ring. Later, in the bath, Sid realizes he has misplaced the ring. Entering the bath, he reflects on his efforts to persuade Rose. He hopes she gathers herself to lead a rebellion, and Epsilon offers to wash Shadow's back. Sid informs her of an unexpected development, and Epsilon expresses concern. Sid assures her there won't be an issue, mentioning he gave the key to Rose. If she finds the strength to rise, the rebellion's banner will naturally follow. Epsilon is surprised that Rose holds the key. Sid reveals the decisive battle will occur in 3 days, on the wedding day. He believes this time frame allows Rose to process her emotions. The scene shifts to the wedding day, where protesters outside the castle demand the cancellation of the wedding and removal of the false princess from her throne. The soldiers present label anyone opposing Princess Rose as part of the resistance and open fire on the citizens. In a different place, Perf believes he's nearing his goal. He faced unexpected challenges and didn't anticipate the king risking his own safety to tamper with the succession ring. Perf transferred ownership of the ring from himself to Princess Rose. Mordred informed him that he must marry Rose to integrate his blood into the royal line and become the ring's owner, a process typical for such artifacts, although Perf dislikes it. Despite the complications, Perf believes his hard work will soon pay off, and he'll become a Knight of the Rounds. Opening the ring box, he discovers it's empty. Trying to close and open it again doesn't change anything. Panicking, he wonders how he could lose the ring and searches frantically. Unable to find it in his clothes, Mordred contacts him, confirming that all arrangements have been made, and after the ceremony, the 12th seat of the rounds will be his. Mordred expresses high hopes for Perf, and the communication ends. Perf decides he doesn't need the succession ring immediately, and plans to come up with an excuse to delay the ring exchange. The story shifts to Rose entering the marriage hall. People around talk about how the ceremony is just a formality to hand everything over to Duke Perv Ashat. Rose goes to the stage, and the priest asks if they are willing to become husband and wife. To everyone's surprise, Rose refuses. Perv is taken aback and questions why the princess would say that. Rose admits to murdering her father, betraying her kingdom, and pledging allegiance to a shadowy organization. She takes responsibility for all these crimes, but expresses her determination to make things right before it's too late. Rose then accuses Perv of manipulating her father, defiling the queen, and plotting to overthrow the government. Perv demands proof, but Rose admits she has none. Unfazed, Perv claims it's not a game and reveals he has a hostage. He orders Rose to marry him, but she refuses, stating she won't give up on love no matter what. She swears this on the ring given by Sid, surprising Perv. Rose puts on the ring, and it activates, displaying a video of the king. In the video, the king explains that he lost his senses due to being drugged, implicates Duke Perv Ashat, and reveals the kingdom is under the control of a massive organization supporting him. The nobles realize the video might be playing throughout the kingdom, jeopardizing their allegiance to Perv. The king entrusts the kingdom's future to Rose, professing his love for her. Perv dismisses it as nonsense, but the nobles brand him a traitor and Rose beheads him. Mordred, revealed as the killer of the queen, introduces himself as the Knight Seat of the Rounds. He congratulates Rose on the key succession ceremony and activates a device, explaining that the possessor of the ring and the user of the device don't need to be the same person to activate Black Rose. The Black Rose manifests in the sky, and Mordred reveals it to be the legendary monster that wiped out 100,000 Velgoltan troops in one night. Mordred explains that eliminating witnesses is the cult's law, and an archfiend named Ragnarok emerges from the Black Rose, attacking the capital with a beam. Shadow intervenes, cutting one of its arms, and comments on the rarity of a rose in the sky, finding it unsightly. Previously, Ragnarok was summoned by Morid, but as soon as he was summoned, Shadow cut down one of his hands and made his entry. The story continues as Alpha gets news that the Black Rose has been activated. She believes that the chaos before creation has started. Eta wonders if Alpha plans to send a ship to Oriana, but doubts they'll make it in time even if they do. Alpha reassures, mentioning that Shadow is present. Ragnarok summons monsters to attack Oriana, surprising Morid when Shadow injures him. Morid questions Shadow's identity, and Shadow, along with the members of Shadow Garden, reveals themselves at the marriage hall. They disperse to handle the monsters, and Shadow advises Rose to leave, citing her own tasks. Rose departs, and Shadow confronts Ragnarok, making Morid skeptical of his abilities. Beta and Epsilon arrive to face Morid, stating their intention to kill him after confirming something. Morid attacks Epsilon with an invisible sword strike, but she dodges, realizing Morid's reputation as the knight beyond men. Morid explains his unseen fencing technique, impressed that Epsilon managed to dodge it. Epsilon attributes her success to an invisible blade, an ancient elven artifact. Beta criticizes Morid for bragging about stolen achievements and claims his armor and cape are artifacts, calling him a coward. This angers Morid, and Epsilon mentions the elven swordsmith who risked his life to forge the blade, asserting they will reclaim it. Morid gets angry and attacks, but Epsilon counters his move with her own attack. Morgred wonders if Epsilon is also using a special tool. Beta claims their wisdom is more powerful than any tool and mentions that Morid will share his knowledge with them. Morid warns of regret and prepares to attack again. Meanwhile, Rose defeats the last monster in the castle but sees many more in town. Shadow Garden handles the situation, so Rose leaves it to them. Margaret finds Rose to apologize, but Rose instructs her to lead everyone to the sturdy cellar beneath the castle gardens for safety. Rose plans to rally the knights and rescue citizens in trouble. Margaret agrees and calls Rose queen. Shadow battles Ragnarok, dodging its magical attacks. Shadow captures the monster using threads and asserts control over the sky. After Shadow Garden members leave, the knights ask Rose if they can trust them with the monsters. Rose says they can if Shadow Garden proves their worth by shedding their own blood. She instructs the knights to focus on evacuation, and they leave. Rose notices Shadow still fighting Ragnarok and wonders about Morid's whereabouts. Morid falls from the sky, followed by Beta and Epsilon. Morid can't believe he lost to two little girls, and Beta criticizes him for relying on toys. Morid insists it's not over, as he has Ragnarok and can defeat them instantly. Beta dismisses his claim, stating that the moment he's talking about is still far away. Epsilon asks Morid to clarify some things while they wait. Morid wonders what they want to know, and Beta mentions their interest in the Black Rose, magical beasts, and the cult. Morid refuses to share this information, believing that Ragnarok will likely kill them anyway. Beta, unconcerned, convinces Morid to spill the details, pointing out their impending demise. Morid agrees, thinking they will die soon anyway. Morid explains that beyond their world, there are countless other worlds. The girls ask if he means space and planets, but Morid refers to different dimensions as realms. He describes various types of realms, like realms of fire, ice, or poison, all revolving around a single point. Their world also orbits this point, though they don't know what's at the center. Occasionally, these worlds collide, connecting them. Morid illustrates the consequences of such collisions with an example. He mentions studying the ancient strata of their planet, discovering that magic didn't exist before a certain point in time. Magic came to their world when it collided with a different realm, altering the biosphere. Dragons couldn't survive, but humanoid races thrived. This leads to an unanswered question. Did humans also come from another realm, like magic and its creatures? Morid highlights the mystery surrounding the human race, suggesting their high intellect could be because they arrived from a different world. Over the years, things have crossed between their world and other realms. Morid mentions Atlantis, an island nation that vanished without a trace, likely going to another realm. This exchange between their world and other realms influences each other equally. Everyone wonder if Diablo also came from another realm, and Morid explains that Diablo was created in their world. However, the creature that inspired the demon Diablo came from a different realm, referred to as the First Realm. Morid mentions gaining wisdom from Diablo and believes the girls must have figured out the true nature of the rose in the sky by now. Beta clarifies that the rose is an artificial gate to another realm. Morid recalls that Oriana accidentally opened this gate once, leading to the destruction of Voltan soldiers. However, the kingdom remained unharmed, and magical creatures continued pouring out, consuming humans. The cult intervened, closing the gate to save Oriana. In return, Oriana was expected to give Rose, whose royal blood was rich in magic, to the cult as an infant. Rose's father refused, sparking the current conflict. Morid reveals their plan to destroy Oriana, but claims they aim to build a better kingdom afterward. Rose opposes this, but Morid dismisses her, stating her opinion won't matter as she is destined to be destroyed by Ragnarok. Suddenly, parts of Ragnarok fall on Morid, and the scene shifts to Shadow cutting Ragnarok into tiny pieces with his threads. Morid can't believe what he's witnessing. He thinks it's impossible because Ragnarok is considered the greatest treasure across all dimensions. 559 informs Beta and Epsilon that they have dealt with all the monsters in the capital. Beta issues further orders, but Morid insists that Ragnarok cannot be defeated. He feels like he's in a dream. Morid approaches Ragnarok's fallen arm and somehow combines with it. Afterward, he confronts Shadow in a fight, attempting to attack him. However, his strikes either miss or have no effect on Shadow. Shadow remarks that Morid is even more foolish than beasts, as even animals know when they've met their match. Shadow punches Morid into the sky, and despite Morid's attempts to shoot beams, Shadow dodges them. Shadow then punches Morid into space, recounting how long ago the gods unleashed lightning from the heavens to chastise Earth. Humans, fascinated by this power, eventually gained it in the form of nuclear bombs. Shadow reflects on his goal to surpass this power, covering the entire Earth with his mana. He attacks Morid with his atomic attack, creating a bright light visible to everyone on Earth. Members of Shadow Garden recognize this as the power of their lord. After the light fades, Shadow descends upon Oriana. Something like a black hole opens over Oriana, sucking everything, including Shadow, into it. The scene shifts to a post-apocalyptic Tokyo. We then see Akane Nishino there, trying to save her friends. While on her way, she reflects on a boy she once despised, finding the moon reminiscent of that day. Akane discovers her friends are already dead, acknowledging that no one they take away survives even a day. She attempts to return but is attacked by two men, now turned into cyborgs, who had kidnapped her before. They knock her out and kidnap her again, taking her to the same warehouse as before. Upon waking up, one of the men warns Akane about wandering alone, even as the supposed great savior, as she might attract unsavory characters like them. He mentions their client wants her alive and notes that she seems to have made many enemies. The other man, about to kill Akane, is stopped by the first man. Both men have lost their memories due to tampered brains. The burly man recalls the stylish bandit Slayer, but attempts to kill Akane. However, Shadow enters the warehouse, destroying the roof, and easily defeats the burly man. The other man questions Shadow's identity, and Shadow introduces himself before taking out the second man as well. This brings an end to our second season of Eminence of Shadow. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more anime recaps.